all, and I'm glad that the West Coast is doing really well, and I hope we're not stepping on their toes or anything like that here. I want to talk a little bit about spirit rescue tonight, and just for
Tick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just before you get into it, for anyone who's not familiar with Zoom, at the bottom of your screen it says chat. And if you've got any questions while Tick is talking, please feel free to enter them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and we can ask him questions as he goes along. Okay, that way we keep the ball rolling, but we can get people's questions answered as well. Sorry about that, Tick. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Hi, Louise. I just wanted to talk just a little bit about myself, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. We get about 3-4 hours. I probably can do it in that time. But I'm a retired engineer. I taught for over 30 years in a community college, also practiced engineering for 40 years, moonlighting. I have a bachelor's and master's in engineering. I have a doctorate in education. I started working with spirit rescue sometime around the turn of the century, and I've been working with that for quite a number of years since then. Wrote a book on spirit rescue, and wrote another book on care and treatment of wild energies. I belong to my local chapter, and also I'm on the board of ASD. I'm currently the treasurer. And the only reason I'm treasurer is because I know how to do Excel. Otherwise, I'm an engineer. I don't know anything about money. So anyway, so what I want to do is talk a little bit about spirit rescue tonight. I want to talk a little bit about, and what I would like you to do is raise your hand or use the chat to ask your questions. Lidra will pick them up, and as they come in, she'll tell me, or she'll interrupt me and say, "Hey, Tick, there's a question from Malik about this." Questions are good. Speeches aren't good because I'm the one that's meant to be speaking. You can ask questions, all right? And so please, you can ask your questions if you'd like. And so go ahead and do that whenever you have questions. Yes, Carol Gator, thank you. Thank you, Carol. The handouts, they came right from Don Taylor. I sort of cut them up a little bit. One of the, and I think Carol also went to the Don Taylor School of Esoteric Tuning at one of the conferences. I remember Carol being in one of my classes at that when I was taking it back in the late 90s or early 2000s. I don't remember exactly when. So I want to talk a little bit about spirit rescue and talk a little bit about ghosts and that sort of thing, and then get to what you can do about it as a dowser. And that's the most important thing, because we have the dowsing experience. We can get yes and no answers, and if you can get yes and no answers, you can talk to them, and you can help them to move on. And that's the important part, is moving on, because they are humans too. Mostly humans. There are some other non-humans. Talk about that in a bit. Why spirit rescue? Well, I was interested in spirit rescue. I've been interested in it for quite a while. I was also one of those guys that got spooked a lot. You know, you're walking along at night. I used to go hunt and stuff like that at night, not deer hunting. Used to hunt at night and or be by myself a lot, and used to get spooked a lot. You know, used to go by cemeteries. You wonder what the heck's going on here. And so that's where it started. Now, I don't usually go around looking for trouble. I don't deliberately walk into haunted places to go do these things that you see on television. But when I do hear of a haunting, or something like somebody call me up and say, "Hey, you know, this place up in Maine called the White Wolf Inn has a spirit there, and I, you know, they're haunted, and they'll tell me, and a lot of times people have pet ghosts, you know, the bar or the inn or somebody like that will have the pet ghost, the ghost that comes in and, you know, and moves things around, and everybody goes ha 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 ha. Unfortunately, that's really not where we want to be doing this. And without getting preachy, these are human beings, and so I like to see them help move on, help them move to some other place. And what is that other place? Well, some people might call it the light. Some people might call it heaven. Some people might call it anything else. My grandmother used to call it her great reward. I'm going to my great reward. But once a spirit has gone to that light, and presumably they're no longer concerned with earthly things. So after someone passes, if they go to the light, they don't care about the earthly stuff anymore, to the extent that we care about it. But if they don't move on, if they stay earthbound, and what do I mean by earthbound? Earthbound is basically from, you know, earthbound spirit is one who is concerned with earthly matters, earthly things, and is not, hasn't moved on. So not all spirits are earthbound, and not all spirits are people. I found all sorts of creatures dealing with spirit. I used to also do seances, and in the seances that I went to or conducted, I'd see and did psychic readings. You'd see all these things: cats, dogs, had a Shetland pony once, and a big horse once. They'd come in and give a reading. They'd give a message to the person, the owner, and stuff like that. And very often there were messages of love and light and all that stuff. And the dog would say, "Oh, geez, I'm so glad you put me to sleep because I was in such pain," or something like that. And everybody's, "Oh, you know, that was really neat," and stuff like that. And I never had anybody say, "I wish you didn't give me that operation when I was a year old." But anyway, I've seen that, and so, you know, one of the other things is Coco. Remember Coco the gorilla? How Coco could talk with her using sign language and stuff. And why wouldn't a sentient being like that have a spirit and like a dog or cat or something like that? So these things are around. Reptiles. Think about all the dinosaur spirits that might be kicking around. And all that other stuff. So there are around anyway. Reptiles, so-called vampires, dragons, step-ins, and a whole host of other ones. Now, those are some of the ones that are maybe not the best in the world, but then there's a bunch of them like angels and spirit guides and nature spirits. And nature spirits are kind of fun. There's a whole bunch of different ones. Anybody that works at a garden or something like that, they run across nature spirits. And I had some a few years ago that really penalized me for using poison on my walk, and they made my tomato crop fail. And who knows what else they did. And they didn't like it when I walked into the room or walked into the garden because of my malfeasance. However, so they can be cantankerous, as it were. One of the handouts that I sent out was a description of entities, and the entities that I put in there were, it's basically for a program for programming yourself to understand what these things are. If you dowsers use dowsing programs instead of having to go through a whole long list of things. If somebody asks you a question, very oftentimes it might take you 3 or 4 minutes to answer the question. If you have a dowsing program, you can just induce the dowsing program and ask the question with the dowsing program. So the entities program is something. Now I don't own it. I was given permission by Don Taylor, who's a sky dowser now. Someone passed on. Was a very good teacher, very good dowser, and I owe a lot of my knowledge to him and his teachings anyway. Before I got started doing some of my own work. So this entities program, these entities that are on there, if you just list some of the types of other, you see them. And then there's something called a negative program, which is a subconscious habit. So sometimes people have habits that are like a negative program. That is also could be treated like an entity. But from where I stand in spirit rescue, I'm looking at primarily human spirits. We're trapped in near-earth existence. They're earthbound. A spirit may be earthbound because it doesn't know it's dead. It doesn't know its body is gone. It doesn't, or it might know that it has passed on, his body has passed on, but they choose to hang around. So that's kind of interesting. You got two different cases. One way, they think they don't know that they passed on, and they think, and very oftentimes they think they're just doing the same stuff they've done year after year, over and over and over again. There was one guy in a church that was in charge of this, that was in charge of keeping the stove stoked during services. And so for, let's see, he passed in the 1880, I don't remember exactly, 1880s. So for 100 years, he'd just keep that stove lit in his mind. So he didn't know he was passed. One of the reasons that they are earthbound, that they don't know they're past, is that they suffered some sort of tragic, instant traumatic death, being ripped out of their bodies, and they don't know that they're dead. So part of the problem with working with these people is knowing how to approach them and knowing that they've suffered some trauma. Many hitchhiker stories on a dark night, dark night going down a road, dark road, nobody's there. You pick up a stranger. People don't pick up strangers nowadays, but 30 years ago, pick up a stranger driving down a road, and oh yeah, that was Charlie. He died in a car accident 50 years ago, or something like that. That's where that came from. A lot of those are spirits. Some people have passed while they're in comas. Thinking about our current situation with the COVID, thinking about the people who are dying while they're on ventilators, and so they're in a coma, and they pass in a coma. Some people don't know, or if they have mental deficiencies, somebody who has Alzheimer's or some other mental deficiency, causing them to lose their abilities to know, and so they just hang out on the earth plane. There was a guy, author named David Pitkin, and David was a guy that he used to send me all sorts of troubling stuff. Every time there was a ghost or haunting or something like that, there was a pain in the neck or it was a little bit out of the ordinary, he'd send it over to me, and I'd have to look at it and see what he was up to. and work on it. And he brought me to a house. I actually went to this house. It was a house where Susan B. Anthony lived in upstate New York. And she, I can't remember, I think she died of, she was kind of demented and if I remember correctly, and she was in pain and she was delirious and she had great fear of dying. And so she remained in the house because she was afraid of dying. And one of the things that I helped her doing is showing that dying wasn't the worst thing in the world and that she could go on to a better place, as it were. Some don't know they're dead because, some who do know they're dead, they're afraid of going to hell. They're religious. They're afraid of going to hell. They wake up after dying, and there's this light over there, and they wake up and geez, I'm dead, but and what's that light? But geez, I'm not in hell. I'm staying here. I like this. And so they hang out. And so you get a bunch of them that do that, and they do some fun things. Or and very often spirits will go to church because that's where their faith was. And so they'll go to a church and they'll spend their existence in a church. I've been to many churches that are just loaded with spirits. And why? Because that's their connection with God. And this one couple in the Mohawk church where I did some work years ago, there was a couple that was a brother and sister, but they were living as man and wife. And they thought that they were really sinning. And so they were in church. And as hard as I tried to convince them that they weren't, wasn't a real problem, they knew they were dead, but they were repenting for their sins. And so I just let them be, let them go. But I don't know if they're still there. I never checked it. Probably could. But again, brother and sister, they thought they were going to go to hell. And they went to a church to atone for their sins. Some people love somebody so much, so dearly, that they can't imagine leaving that person. So they, you see the movie Ghost, I guess. That wasn't quite the same, but, where somebody's hanging out because they love somebody dearly. Some people think they have a duty to perform. And so therefore they have to stay there. And where have I seen that? I've seen that with people who are, this one woman was in a factory, and her job was to make sure the factory was running right. And she was meant to do this thing every day and work on it every day. And after she passed, she didn't want to do it. And, she did not want to do it. She kept on doing it every day there. It's like the guy with the potbelly stove. The thing is, with the guy with the potbelly stove, he didn't know he died. And when they finally got around to talking to him about it, it was funny because he said, "Oh, okay, I'm dead, bye." And he's gone. Didn't need to help him or anything like that. Once he realized that he was passed, it was that, no problem, let's go. Sometimes they can't bear that they cause somebody pain, and they have to hang out and try to atone for that pain. I have had one of David Pitkin's things where there was a haunting in his house, and the woman had passed in this house, who was haunting this house. Well, she had an argument with her daughter years before, and her daughter got in her car, was really mad, and screamed off, and she got in a car wreck and killed herself. It wasn't deliberate, but I mean, it happened. And this mother was so, aghast, and it was such an awful thing for her that when she passed, eventually she just couldn't go on. She just couldn't go on. And what I had to do was bring the daughter in and tell the daughter, look, let's talk to your mom and see what we can do to get things going on. The daughter had passed on. She'd gone to the light, as it were, and but she eventually came down and talked to her mother, and then they worked her way out. Some people don't have any concept of life beyond the physical death. Some people have no spirituality. Some people have a spirituality that's different than us. And so when they die, suddenly they're awake. What happens? So they hang out. And some of them just like it here. Any spirit who occupies a bar or a movie theater or a restaurant is likely aware that they're dead, likely aware that their bodies died. But it's the thrill of being alive, living through the other people who are around them. For instance, the movie theater, all the yelling, howling, and screaming. They go to horror movies or something like that, or action movies. They pick up on the energy of the persons. They go to bars and they drink, or they egg people on a drink and stuff like that. So it's a thrill of being alive sometimes. But going back to the first group who didn't know that they're dead, some of them are afraid. They're frustrated. They're confused. They're frightened. They don't know what happened. And sometimes they're angry. What happened here? Sometimes an earthbound is what I would call an energy vampire. And they get their energy from living beings. And they attach themselves to people, crystals, animals. Somebody came to our house one time, and she had a crystal necklace. And I looked at that crystal necklace and I said, there's somebody on that crystal necklace, I can tell. And I brought it away from everybody else. I dowsed it, and sure enough, there was a spirit that had attached itself to the crystal and was feeding off the energy of the crystal. If you think about a quartz crystal, some people can feel a quartz crystal. You can put your hand over the crystal and feel the energy of it, and that energy then supplies the spirit with energy, and so they can attach themselves to crystals. Often when I'm dowsing, and I get criticized for this a lot, but I'm going to say it here again, shouldn't use crystals for dowsing. I shouldn't use rocks or amethysts or something like that for dowsing. Why? Because they could have people attached to them. You could have attachment, which will give you wrong answers. Metal is also bad in a way, and if you have a metal pendulum or metal dowsing rods, sometimes that is a problem too. Crystal's worse though. Plastic is really good. Wood is really good because there is no three-dimensional repeating structure of the crystalline structure like you would have with the crystal. Quartz, and the energy doesn't flow through. That earth energy flows up through the crystal and supplies energy to the entity. What I really look at is the true benefit and purpose of spirit rescue is to affect communication with earthbound spirits and to make their transition to a plane beyond this earth plane. Okay? It's sacred and loving, And I find that it's very nice very nice experience, but you have to approach it with humility and reverence. Sometimes I've gotten in trouble not being. I went to this restaurant one time, and the restaurant was meant to be haunted. And I went over to this place, and it was haunted. And I went over to this sewing machine, and I dowsed his spirit here. Yeah, there's a spirit here. Man, should I talk with a spirit? Yeah, okay, I'll talk with a spirit. And then I said, okay, so are you man, woman? Try to get their name, how old they were, or whatever. Obviously, the spirit knew it was past. And then there was a sewing machine there, and there was also a candle flame on top of the sewing machine. And I was talking to the spirit, and there were people watching me while I was doing it, and I said something really nasty to it, which obviously I get slapped around for saying it nowadays. But I said, well, that's a sewing machine. Isn't that woman's work? And oh my God, all of a sudden the flames start shooting up and down. People were watching. And I said, what the hell did you say that? I said, well, and I got out of the spirit that tailors were men back when he was alive. And that was his job. He was a tailor. And so what I had done is I obviously sinned against him and all women. And since I have tried to atone for my sins on that one. But again, it was interesting because the spirit knew it was past, and it got angry at me. Spirits can get angry. In this case, it was making the flames shoot up and down a candle. What the heck did you do? What did you say to that spirit?
Dick, we have a couple of questions.
Yes, sure.
Quick break. So, and they're kind of tied together. The first one is from Kim. She just wanted to confirm that you're recommending using only plastic or wooden pendulums, bobbers, or other dowsing tools. And then another question from Holly is, I guess if you're not using those things, how do you keep your pendulum clear?
Good. All right. First question. Wood. I mentioned wood. What about wood or plastic? Those are the optimum. I've got probably, between B and I, we probably have a dozen or so wooden pendulums around the house. By the phone, here, there, everywhere. You just pick up a wooden pendulum. Why wood? Well, I don't like it. It's not very heavy, but it doesn't get messed up. A metal pendulum, the teardrop sort of thing, they tend to pick up stuff, and you have to clean them every now and then. And the same thing with a crystal. I knew I was going to get in trouble with that. Now, so is plastic better? Yeah, plastic, wood, sure. But, don't use it. I use a metal one. It's my favorite one. And so but you have to understand that it can get dirty. How do you clean it? Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. Some people believe that they, like with their crystals, they can put it in the moonlight or sunlight or whatever. No matter what I think is you need to put them in some source of an energy that's more attractive to the spirit and have that spirit go off to the energy, or do a spirit rescue on the pendulum or the device that you're working with. Can and will use dowsing system clear my pendulum of entities? Yes. Please take the appropriate action. Okay. And indicating the progress with my pendulum swinging, and as soon as it stopped, then we know it's clear. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Some people salt water. Primarily, it's using an energy that's stronger than the one that's coming through your pendulum. There's a three-dimensional structure in the metal that allows for energy to flow through it. I generally can't feel metals, but I can feel tungsten, for instance. The metal tungsten, which is very powerful energy in it. And so that would certainly not be one that you could use. Quartz, obviously, hematite, all those other ones that you can feel that there's energy flowing through them probably wouldn't be a good idea. I probably said too much.
There's two more questions. How do you perceive and work with entities? And then sort of tied to that from Jeannie, how do you clear out an energy vampire that's attached to a person? But I think that's getting into another subject.
Let's go on. Yeah, let's go on. Let's go on. Yeah. I'll answer the, I forgot, what was the first one?
How do you perceive and work with entities?
Yeah, all right. We'll get to that. So one of the things we want to do is communicate with the spirit, and we do a spirit rescue to communicate and help it to move on, go to the light, and that's really the communication and get it go to light is really the best way of working with a spirit. Now, sometimes people say, well, we get it out of this room, so I'm going to douse and we're going to get it out of this room. Well, it's going to go somewhere. You know, one of my early experiences with dowsing was at a funeral home, an old funeral home, and it was spirits hang around funeral homes, and I'll get to that in a second or a little while. Spirits like to hang around funeral homes, and so this thing had funeral spirits in it, and I went up there and I dowsed it, and I said, "There's no spirits in this funeral home. What the heck's going on?" And then one of the guys, old timer dowser, said, "Oh, I came here and dowsed it. They're gone. I kicked them out." And I said, "Did you send them to the light?" "Oh, no, I just kicked them out. They're not here anymore." I said, "Okay." And while I was there, I kept running into these spirits that were standing around the house, this old funeral home. And I'd run into them. I could feel in my arms. I could feel it going through their energy. I said, "What the heck?" And then it dawned on me that they kicked them out of the house, but they didn't send them on. They just kicked them out of the house. Now, as soon as we left that place, all the spirits went back in the house. So they were afraid of the guy that pushed them out, but as soon as we left, they all went back in the house. That was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty interesting. So they also have a sense of humor. Not only do they get angry, they do have a sense of humor. But so they didn't really remove the spirit. So really, to get it to go to the light is the way to do it. And can they go to light without our intercession, without doing it? Yeah, I they can. Why do we need to help them? Don't know. Don't know for sure. I think that for the most part, sometimes the live energy is good. Sometimes we invoke things, maybe we remind them, or we also, during the spirit rescue, we bring their loved ones in and help them move on. Remember, they all have free will, so they don't have to go. And sometimes that's a trouble. And so, sometimes it's trouble. And you have to work extra hard on them. There was one spirit that I was working with that wouldn't leave. He loved it where he was using him like a pet. They took him places with him and stuff like that. And I was like, geez, you're not meant to do that. And finally, I threatened the spirit, and it was probably an idle threat. I shouldn't say it because the heavens are going to open up and I'm going to get struck by lightning. But I said that I told the spirit that unless it left this house, that I was going to ask my dowsing system, which let's talk about for a second. What's a dowsing system? It's whoever you douse with. Now, some people douse with their aunts and uncles who might be passed, parents, loved ones, saints, Jesus, God, whomever, spirit guides, guardian angels, whatever. And so I said, well, you know, if you don't leave this house and go to the light, I'm going to tell my spirit guides and guardian angels to tie you up, take you far away from everywhere until such time that you can be rehabilitated and such time that you want to go to the light. And that spirit thought for a little while. I said, I want to go to the light. And gone. Okay. So it was a long time getting that conclusion, but I had to prevaricate a little bit because I don't know if my guys would do that. But most of the time they'll go on their own. So one of the things that one of the places where they go is they go to all sorts of places. I said movie theaters and stuff like that, churches, hospitals, and cemeteries. Yes, cemeteries. They do hang out in cemeteries. Whenever I give a talk, a dowsing talk, I try to go to one of these haunted places like a cemetery and take people out to the cemetery, get them to talk to all the ghosts because they're all there, all hanging around. Sometimes they hang around by where they last saw their body go into the ground. Sometimes they go in and lay on the body waiting for the rapture. They believe that there's going to be a rapture and that their bodies are going to go to heaven, and they hang out with the body and wait for the rapture. So they do hang out there. Sometimes they just hang around cemeteries. Sometimes you can get them to go on early. So anywhere that the body has gone, hospitals, morgues, funeral homes, and so one of the questions then was, what do you do? How do you handle it? So first thing you have to do is you have to douse. You know, you can do this without dowsing, but you're not going to have very good questions unless you happen to be clairvoyant. If you're clairvoyant, then you shouldn't have any trouble. But if you're not, and also, earthbounds have different energy than the spirits that have gone on to the light. So your Aunt Martha, who isn't earthbound, may be able to connect with you just fine. But if our Aunt Martha is earthbound, then she has a different energy. And so sometimes you can't communicate with them the same way as you would like in a seance or in a message or something like that. So what do? You learn how to dowse, trust your dowsing. You have a yes and no, and that's all you really need to know. Yes or no. And then you just go ahead and start the questions. And one of the first things I always say is you want to be protected. And so one of the things I put in with your packet was a provide protection program for you to use. And you can use that or any other method, but use that, think about how you want to be protected while you're doing this. You don't want to bring the spirit home with you. There was a guy in one of my dowsing groups one time. He used to say, "You're nuts working with those ghosts. You're going to bring them home with you." I said, not really. You just protect yourself. No, you're going to bring them home with you. You're going to bring. Okay, fine. But you don't have to. You don't have to bring them home with you. You ask for protection. And here you ask your dowsing system in the provide protection program or whatever methodology you use. Some people talk about white light around themselves. Some people talk about asking for mirroring protection. For instance, I put a protection in front of myself that's like a mirror. Something comes in, it gets reflected out. That sort of thing. So after you ask for protection, then you would always go to with the dowsing, we always go, may I, can I, should I, right? May I, is it my permission? Do I have permission to do this? Can I, do I have the ability to do this? And should is it best that I intervene in this way? Is it in the highest good of all that I get involved with this? And if you can get an answer yes to all those things, good. If you can't get an answer yes, don't do it. Go away. Don't bother. Because your dowsing is going to be no good. You might get in trouble. Stay away from it. The other thing is I like to do is follow the Don Taylor's Chicken School of Dowsing. Now, the Don Taylor's Chicken School of Dowsing is this. Be a little bit afraid. Be a little bit cautious. And that way you won't have to have any consequences. So you don't go into a deserted house in the middle of the night with your pendulum. You don't, I mean, there's no need to. You do it remotely. You don't do it around a whole bunch of people who are loaded with energy, who want the thrill of hearing things go bump in the night. You don't do it. You just stay away. You do it on your own. Most of the spirit rescue stuff I've done is remotely, although I do a lot face-to-face. But again, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to a haunted cemetery and doing it that. I'm using the Chicken School of Dowsing. Be aware where you are. Be aware of what's going on, and just make sure that you're treated with respect and love and caution as you ordinarily would. Live demo, huh? I don't know about that, Holly. I don't have any spirits around here. Make sure you respect the process. It is actually a human spirit that you're working with. And so once you get permission, so you just start off with, and I'll say, should I douse about entities? Yes. First off, are there entities in this house? There are no entities in this house. Is there an entity outside of in the yard? No, nothing. It's pretty clear. Okay, but anyway, you ask for that. So you douse, you get a map. If you're going to do a remote one, you get a map. Or use a remote Google Earth. Look down on Google Earth. Should I douse this map? Should I douse this image? Is this building, is this house, is this barn clear of entities for all times and all aspects of its being? Throughout all time, all aspects of being. Is it yes or no? And so you start off with your pendulum, yes or no. And should I douse to do a spirit rescue? And I'm getting a no, so I shouldn't do it, which of course, silly, but yes, no. Okay, and then you go from there. Will you, spirit guides, guardian angels, make contact with this being and ask if this being would like to speak with me, yes or no? And they'd say yes or no, yes. They say, well, please do so. And then introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Tick Gaudreau. How you doing today? And you may get something like, your pendulum might swing back and forth. You keep your pendulum swinging. Are you well? Yes. Okay, good. And you just go on from there. Talk to them but you're using your pendulum for yes and no. So you get yes and you get no. So you go on from there. Now, one of the things that people want to do right away is, do you know that you're dead? That's something you don't want to do. Okay, why? Because it scares the jeepers out of them. If they don't know they're dead, it'll scare them. So don't say, do you know you're dead? And you have to approach it very nice, very softly, like, do you know what year it is? And they might say yes or no. Yes, okay. All right. Is it 2020? No. Is it 1920? no, and then you have to start horsing around, find out what year they think it is. So if they know what year, yeah, not 2020, you know that they're okay, that they know that they're dead. And then you can ask, do you know that you're dead? It'd be safe to ask at that point. But you go back and you go, all right, so it's not 2020. Is it between 1900 and 1950? No. Is it between 1950 and 2000? No. Is it between 1850 and 1900? Yes. Okay. Then you sort of cut it down and figure out what the time is. So yeah, do I do distant? Oh yeah, I use maps, and you can do it face to face, or you can use a map, or as well. As I said, a lot of the work I do, I don't go face to face. I use a map. I am dowsed all over the world. New Zealand is a place where I've dowsed a lot for a former president of ASD, Bill Northern. Bill's a horse whisperer, and I get to work with him every now and then. He has horses all over the world that need help. Ireland, and I can't remember, Italy or something like that I was in, and just dowsing remotely. So after you find out whether the spirit's dead or not, don't say, oh, well, it's 1850, oh, you're dead. That's not really cool. And you get a sort of a feeling with their answers. If they start getting slow, or if they're quick, then you'll be able to feel their emotions that way. And you can get around the knowledge of their death by delicate questions, because that's the first thing you need to do is get them to know that they're dead. I remember specifically, when I went to this place with this old guy tending the fire, I had a 35 millimeter camera on my neck. I had a video camera around my neck, and I had a cell phone in my pocket. And so I got talking to this spirit. I said, what year it was, what it is, and I was 18 something or other, I don't remember. Tell me, have you ever seen the stuff that I have on my body right now? Oh yeah, I've seen it. He'd seen it because there's tourists going to this place all the time. So he saw it. Yeah, sure, I've seen it. How about the clothes I'm wearing? Oh yeah, I've seen the clothes. All right. Yeah, geez. I pulled out my cell phone. I said, do you know what this is? No, I don't know what this is. I said, this is a telephone. Do you know what a telephone is? No. Okay. Now I can talk with somebody remotely in another county, in another country, with this telephone. Do you know what that means? Yeah, I know what that means. And suddenly he started waking up and said, oh, you could almost hear the gears turning. Oh, so, so that's a telephone. And it's almost like you could feel it going. And you said, okay, now, do you know where it is? Yes. What year? It was 19 something. I don't remember what it was. And I said, yeah, it is. And he said, I'm dead. I said, yep. He said, goodbye. Gone. He didn't want to be around anymore. Goodbye. So once you approach that, once you get that thing with this person that you work out the year, and then you get them interested in what you're doing. Once you find out that they know that they're dead, then you can ask the question. Would you like? Do you know what the light is? Yes, they know what the light is because they've seen it already. They see it probably all the time, but they don't know what the heck it is. They don't know that it's good for them. They don't know they can go into it or whatever. Do you know what the light is? No. Okay. Is there something? Would you like? if I told you that all your friends and loved ones and everybody that you've known in the past are in the light, would you like to go there? Yes. Okay, good, good, good. All right, so now we got that. And you can stop, you can ask them questions. At this point, you can ask them questions, find out, do an alphabet chart to find out their names, find out when they died, find out what they died from, all these things. You can do all this stuff if you care to. If you don't care to, which most often, when I first started out, I asked all these questions. After a while, I realized, no, I don't really care to. Gladys McCoy, who was an old-time dowser from the Ozarks, used to say, I don't care what the hell it is, let's get them out of here. So Gladys, so again, so you don't have to know all this stuff. You say, all right, well, so you can go. Is there something that you would like, is there somebody that you'd like to come and visit with you? All right, a loved one, son, daughter, mother, father, and then you encourage that group. Will you spirit guides, guardian angels, or will your dowsing system or whomever you work with bring the loved ones, the spirit guides, the helpers, all the friends of this person, have them come, join with this person, and take them to the light? And the answer, yes. I've never heard anybody say no. Yes, they'll take them to the light. And what they do is they come in, and it's almost like, if you remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, at the very end, when Richard Dreyfuss is walking up and all the space aliens surround him, it's almost like the space aliens surround, all these loved ones surround this person with love, and then they take them off. And then they're gone. So it's really a beautiful thing. And then you can tell, is that person gone? Yes. And that's it. So it's really kind of simple. It's really kind of cool. And it's really kind of getting time that I have to shut up and answer some questions. But one of the things I do want to mention here is that, and I want to tell one more story, and that this is something that's really important that we do. If we're dowsers and we want to do it, that we do it. I was at a seance years ago, I don't remember when, and we're at this library, and a spirit was in this library as a little girl. And she had been in this library for 100 years or something like that. And all people she ever knew, everything like that, gone. She rattled around this library year after year after year, being afraid, being lonely, and stuff like that. And through a spirit rescue, and I'm not blowing my own horn or anything like that, but through a spirit rescue, we were able to connect this little girl with her parents, and then she was able to move on to the light, at which time she joined with them in, in whatever is the afterlife, whatever you believe to be is the afterlife, that's where she went. So anyway, it's really important that we do this stuff. One of the things is we help. We do something really great. We also, once we do this, we realize that there's something that's beyond this plane. We're stuck here. We're stuck in our three-dimensional bodies that hurt and feel and are hungry and cold. But there's something beyond this plane. And the something that beyond this plane is something that is not to be feared, because we've seen the love that comes beyond that coming to around the surrounding the spirits. So that's something that we know that there's, and it's not just for everybody else, it's also for you. And that takes a whole lot of fear out of you. Because once you know that there's something beyond this realm, then it takes a lot of the fear of living and also fear of death. Because if you have a fear of death, you can't have living. You have a fear of living as well.
Dick, there's another question. Kim, you seem to be putting the chat to me privately, which is great, thank you. But I'm not sure that Tick is seeing it. So her question is that is Spirit Rescue Protocol different from Entity Protocol? Because the handouts seem to address Entity Removal Protocol. So
Yes.
is that the same thing?
Yeah, I'm almost done and I'll answer that question.
Okay.
Finally, we communicate openly with our dowsing systems. We work with them, we get things going on, and then we find out that our dowsing systems can communicate with us and help us in everyday life, doing things for us, helping us, guiding us. And once we do that, then we've got it. Then we've got it. Okay, querying entities. One of the things that you can do, if you don't want to horse around, if you're in a movie theater and you don't want to horse around talking to everybody, you can use a Clear Entities program very much similar to the one that I passed out. And the Clear Entities program is, and this just sort of like jumps past all the connection, the human connection between you and the spirit. It's just, will you clear it out? And the answer is yes. Entities, there are other types, as I said, other types of things. Again, dragons and reptiles, interdimensional visitors, and Native Americans and stuff like that. These are all people that are things that are there, dogs and horses and cows. And so what that clearing entities, you can have a horse that's haunting you. You can have a horse haunting your barn, for instance. You have a horse, as I said, I work with Bill Northern. Bill Northern every now and then sends me a place where this horse is acting funny. And what you find out is there's a horse that lived in the barn and died, and it's back and it's causing trouble with all the other horses. So you get that horse to move on. You clear entities on that one as opposed to talking to it, although you could probably talk to it. I've never tried to see if they'd give me an answer, though. So that might be something for one of you budding dowsers to do. One of the other things is somebody mentioned a spirit pyramid. One of the things that put together, and I didn't hand it out, I don't know why, because I was thinking about it afterwards, is if you go to a cemetery, like sometimes I go to cemeteries, and you talk to a few spirits here and there, and you get everybody all excited, and you can't take care of everybody, you'd be there all night long. But you put up a spirit pyramid, and basically a spirit pyramid's like a thought form. And the thought form is that this is a place of healing that they can go to, spirits can go to, and you leave it up. Spirits can go to, they can communicate with their loved ones and move on without you being there. Now, I will put that in, I'll send it to Lisa, and whether she'll make it available for people who go on the site and pick it up, but I'll put that up there for Lisa to do, and I'll do that probably tomorrow. As I said, I forgot to do it. Aliens, yep, aliens. Every now and then, you get somebody, and sometimes it's hard to work with them because they don't think the same way we do. But yeah, aliens as well. Any other questions there?
There was one a while back about spirit vampires.
Oh, vampires. Yeah. I've used the word vampire. It's probably not a good name, but it's someone who sucks energy. One of the things that I find is spirits like energy. That's how they survive. And they also transport themselves along energy lines, like you hear noxious veins. Well, they're not necessarily noxious energy, but they're along energy lines. And they transport themselves along noxious energy lines or energy lines. And they can move from one place to another. They might hang out where there's like a confluence of 3 or 4 of them going together. And they use energy. Now, what I said about spirit vampires is sometimes they hook onto you or your horse or a dog or a cow or whatever, and they suck energy. And they take energy. And how do you know that you have one? Well, you feel bad, you feel angry, you feel tired, you yell at your spouse when you don't really want to yell at your spouse, and stuff like that. And or else, if you happen to have a spouse like I do who says, geez, you got something on you again, get that thing off. So, because my voice will ring in her ear funny when I have it. And so that's something that you can pick up. And so you get that spirit vampire taken care of. They like to hop on energy fields and go off to, take an airplane ride. Let's go to San Francisco. Let's take the train out to Oregon. Let's ride the bus down to Schenectady. And so, these are things that they do. And sometimes they're just horsing around, just having fun. Sometimes they're there deliberately to suck energy, like on crystals, on energy lines, and things like that. One of the ways when you clear a house is you also clear the energy lines in that house to make sure that there are, you cut off their transportation. So you get rid of the spirit and you cut out their transportation into the house. Also, if you have a vacant house, a lot of times because they're kind of shy, they'll be there amassing spirits and be having a kegger in your basement if it's vacant. And so what you have to do is sort of move everybody out of there, get rid of the energy lines. And because they like that, they'll sit on sometimes I've seen them where they sit on a highway side, and as cars drive by, they take a little nip of them, of the drivers. And very often you'll see people get drowsy at certain places on the highway, and they get drowsy at certain places on the highway, not necessarily because they've been driving for 3 hours. It's just that there are energy lines there, and you have vampires taking a little nip of you on the highway. I've seen that on more than one occasion. In fact, there's an Indian author, who talked about that in one of his papers. Believe it or not, in a scientific paper, was talking about that kind of energy. So, though that's something that can happen. Yeah. Questions? Other questions? Yeah, Carol, I'll make sure I get that out to you. Other questions? No. Okay. Deidre, anything there?
I think you've covered them. Did everyone who asked a question get it answered, or was there something else that you would like to cover at this point? And again, for anyone who has called in, because we're up to quite a few, 64 participants. Anybody who called in, if you have a question, go ahead and press *9. It will raise your hand and we'll know that you have a question. So we're not looking for stories at this point, but questions if you have any. So we have another one. Is there a book that you've written? And Jeannie is asking again about ridding energy vampires from a person.
By the way, Kim, thanks for the thumbs up. Is there a book? Yes, I have written. It's called Spirit Rescue. It's for sale at the headquarters. It's in the bookstore. Thank you, Holly. What do you do with spirit vampires in a person? More than often, what you do is you just do you know, I didn't talk about exorcisms. I'll talk about that in a second. More often than not, you just do clear entities. We use spirit guides, guardian angels, clear energies from all aspects of this person throughout all times. And because they're, you know, I said there's free will, but if they're infringing on your free will, there's no sense in horsing around with it. They're criminals, and I don't deal with them very well. I just say we use spirit guides, guardian angels, clear entities from this person for all times and all aspects of their being, and boom, they're gone. Okay, or I have bees, spirit guides, and guardian angels, clear entities for all times and all aspects of my being, because sometimes mine don't seem to work for me all the time. Added all dimensions, yes. Good idea. Added all dimensions, certainly. Can somebody please type the name of Spirit Rescue so that Kat can get that? The name of the book, yes, the name of Spirit Rescue. One of the things I've never done it, but I worked with a guy who did, called an exorcist. And I said, geez, I don't know, I'm not really wild about exorcism and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. But what happens is that people are, and they're no different than they are in real life. A lot of people are afraid of or honor or respect the clergy. And so if you get an exorcist that's going and that's going to clear an entity, if they're willing to do it, then you're not really doing anything wrong. All you're doing is you're just you're going to their energy level, where they live, what they stand for. And again, what we're trying to do is communicate with them, and that's the best we can do that way. So that's my answer to exorcism. Some people like that. Some people aren't interested in some. It's like that guy that I tried to get out of that house. I scared him, and I went to his common denominator of him being isolated and in fear, and which unfortunately is something I had to do. But he wouldn't go any other way, and he wasn't meant to be there. He was causing all sorts of troubles in that house. Okay, other questions? No. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you. And hopefully you got something out of this. And I will put out that spirit pyramid. Thank you, Don or Ronald. Thank you. I will send out that spirit pyramid thing to the headquarters. All right. Good enough. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you. And Holly, I didn't see your name anywhere, but thank you, Holly. Nice to not see you. I don't know where you are. So, okay, good enough. Thanks. Bye.